This morning, we are going to talk about taking data out of an existing field. This is often very useful and very important so we can analyze our data in detail. Now, you need to obviously have attended the beginner's course for this to make any sense. Most of this, if not all of this, will be familiar to most of you. So it is a bit of revision, which is good if you've forgotten some of the things. Maybe there's one or two things that someone might pick up. Let's see how it goes. So when we take data out of a field, we use mainly functions, and these are some of the functions we often use. Firstly, we have the split function that we often use, then we have the clean function and the substring function. In fact, those three functions are the only ones that we can use to take data out of an existing field. Those are the only three. Any other functions or tools we might use are purely there to help us along the way. So for example, we have the add function. The add function does not take anything out of a field, but it does help us sometimes to explain to ACL when it is appropriate or how exactly it should use the three functions, split, clean, or substring. And then of course, occurs and regex replace, those we also sometimes use to help us out. So the functions at the bottom are not the only ones we use to help the functions at the top sometimes. But definitely the functions at the top are the only ones we have in ACL to take data out of a field. So never think you can use any function except split, clean, or substring to pull data out of a field. Only those three. Any other functions you might use, the ones I've listed on the slide, the ones not listed on the slide, might help you to help the other functions to do their jobs. Right, so let's just quickly jump into ACL. We'll go straight into ACL and let's look at some data. So I'm first going to look at the transactions table. So in this transactions table, we have this transaction number column. And you'll notice this transaction number, the first one is 5-12852. There is a number followed by a hyphen, followed by some other longer number. Similarly, in record 2, we have the same thing, a number, a hyphen, a longer number. Record 3, we have a number 10, a hyphen, and a longer number. So let's suppose these transactions took place in different branches of our organization. So the first transaction took place at branch number 5, right? The branch is the code to the left of the hyphen. The next transaction took place in branch number 5 as well. The third transaction took place in branch 10, the fourth one in branch 8, the fifth one in branch 12, and so on. So the branch code is to the left of the hyphen. So I want to go ahead and I want to summarize, let's say, on the branch code. I want to know the total transaction value per branch. The problem is I cannot do that exercise right now, because I do not have a branch column. And so it doesn't see the branches, it sees only the transaction number. So what we would need to do is create a column with just the branches. Now, when you want the branch code, in this case, you need to ask yourself, is there a symbol that I see to the left of this branch code? Is there a symbol I see to the right of this branch code? Now, in this case, I don't see a symbol to the left, I do see a symbol to the right. And that symbol is consistently the same. It is that hyphen. It's consistently the same. So whenever we have a symbol to the left or to the right of what we want, we can use either the clean function or the split function. Those two functions specifically work with separators, with symbols that are before or after a certain symbol. We've got to be careful, of course, because split and clean, even though they both use a separator, are slightly different. So if I look here, the clean function, what it does is it kind of deletes things. So if I tell the clean function clean from, and I tell it what the separator is, the symbol that is to the right of the 5. I say clean function, clean from the hyphen. What it will do effectively is it will delete that hyphen and will delete everything also to the right. All that will remain is the 5 on the left-hand side. If I come to record 3, when I say to the clean function clean from the hyphen, it will delete that first hyphen and everything to the right. So let me go do that in the table layout. And I'm going to create a computed field. I'll call this branch code, or just branch. And I'll use the word clean here, so we know I use the clean function. And I'm going to look for the clean function and double click on it. I'll remove all the keywords, but hopefully you know those keywords already from practicing with this in the office. I'm going to double click on the field transaction number, then I'll put a comma, and between inverted commas, because it's character data, I'm going to put the separator, a hyphen. I need to delete that hyphen and delete everything to the right of that hyphen. So when I click OK and save my changes, I can put this now in my view. Okay, see, let me just wait for ACL. Okay, waiting patiently, patiently. I'm just going to close that to free up some memory. Okay, so here I'm going to add the branch code quickly to the view. So there you can see I've cleaned this number from the hyphen. In other words, I deleted that hyphen and I deleted everything to the right of it. Now, another way I could do this exercise is to use the split function, because as I said, split also uses a separator, a symbol that appears to the left or to the right of the thing I want. So the split function does not delete things. It's not, as violent as clean is. What it does is it basically cuts this up. Now, before I explain the split function to you, please understand this. The way you look at something is either going to help you or confuse you, right? There's a famous artist, famous art teacher called Betty Edwards, and she's taught people over the years how to draw, various objects and so on, and how to draw self-portraits. And a lot of these people, of course, can't draw to save their lives when they start the course. And she realized after teaching many art classes that the reason that most people can't draw is because they were not looking at things the way she was. They were not looking at the way artists are. So she changed their perspective and suddenly they could draw. Same thing here in ACL. When you take data out of field, you've got, especially with the function like split, you've got to have a very specific perspective. Now this perspective is very simple. You see this transaction number, this first one that I've highlighted in green. Pretend that green rectangle is a cake. People honestly sometimes don't believe me that you must look at it this way, but if you don't look at it this way, you will get confused. It is a cake. Don't overthink it. This cake doesn't have happy birthday written on it. It has 5-12852 written on it. Don't overthink it. It is a simple cake. It's a green cake. It has this on top of the cake, 5-12852. Now, if you want to eat a piece of cake, that's what the split function does. It helps me to cut the cake so I can eat a piece. If you want to eat a piece of cake, you need to take a knife. That is my split function, and cut this cake. Now, if I want this 5, the logical place to cut is where the thing is to the right of it. The thing to the right of it here is the hyphen. So I'm going to cut there. So in your mind, picture this physical cake in front of you. See the cake, see the number on top, see the knife going through that where that hyphen is. And to the left of the cake, or to the left of where you've cut, you've got a 5. To the right of where you've cut, you've got 12852. So now you need to number the pieces in your head. You've cut there once. If you cut a cake once, you've got 2 pieces. The piece on the left will be piece number 1. The piece on the right will be piece number 2. Because that's how we count. That's how we write in the, in the English-speaking world and in many different languages. We write from left to right. So we're going to number things from left to right. 1 and then 2. So I need to cut this where the hyphen is and take the first piece. Now, some people, as I said, they overthink this. All you need to do is focus on this one cake and cut this one cake, and then see what happens afterwards once you get to the view. Some people get very difficult with themselves. They make life very difficult. They go, but what about this? But what about this? But what about this? If you buy 3 different cakes for someone's birthday, you cut one cake first in the kitchen. That's normal. That's how normal people do it. Once you're finished with the first cake, then you worry about the second cake. I'm only going to cut the first cake. I'll deal with the other cakes later. So I'm going to go to the table layout. I'm going to create a computed field, C_branch, and I'm going to write split here so that we know I use the split function. And I'm going to look for the split function. And I'm cutting a cake. I'm splitting a cake. That cake was in the column called transaction number. That's where I would see that cake. The separator, what is immediately to the right of that 5? Okay, now I'm only thinking about the 5 because I'm only thinking about the first cake at the moment. The way I think about stuff will help me or confuse me. So I want to cut the cake where I see that thing. I want to split this field. For those of you who are more IT confident, I want to split this field where the hyphen is. Right, now, which segment do I want after I've cut this cake? Which piece do I want? I want the first piece. And then I don't need to worry about that story for this session. So I'll just delete the text qualifier, and there we go. Cut the cake where the hyphen is. Now take the first piece. Right? That's all you're doing. So I'll put this in my view somewhere. It will give me the same result as the clean function. Okay, I'm just going to close this as well because, okay, let me not close it right now because it's just getting in my way. All right, so let me quickly go back here, add this column to the view. I want to split this. Right, there we go. It gives me exactly the same result. Now, there is a difference between clean and split. One of them is clean basically deletes a whole lot of things. Split doesn't. Split cuts the cake. And clean always cleans to the right. So what I'm telling you is if I wanted to take this number 12852 out of this column, clean would not work for me. Because clean, if I tell it clean from the hyphen, it will delete that hyphen, everything to the right. It always works towards the right. You will never be able to use clean to get anything that is to the right of a separator. But split, I could use if I wanted this thing to the right. Because split, you are cutting the cake where that is, and then you can tell it specifically, I want the second piece. Clean will wipe out the second piece and the third piece. How many ever pieces there are, clean will wipe them out. Clean will only leave the first piece always. Right. So for this particular exercise, to get the branch, I could have used split or clean. And by the way, I focused only on the first cake, cutting that, and look what happens. ACL applies that same method I taught it, the same formula everywhere. And it turns out it works. And if you go to each cake individually and you look at each one individually, it will make sense why it works. Each time you need to cut that cake where there's a hyphen and then take the first piece. All right. So that one wasn't too bad. Now, if I go to the, let me find another table. Let me go to the employees table here. All right, let me go to employees table. So in the employees table, I have a name column. I want to get everyone's first name. That would be very easy. If I can spot what is to the right of the first name, well, there's a space to the right of the first name. I could now use split and say cut where the space is and take the first piece, or clean from the space. Now let's just be careful here. If I say clean from the space, you will notice there are two spaces here, one after the E and one after this I. The clean function will always start from the first space or the first hyphen or the first whatever that you give it. It will wipe out, as much as it possibly can. So if I do this with the split function and I say, I want to get the first name using the clean function. We just quickly type this. I will clean the name field from the space. The clean function will look for the first space it can find and it will start cleaning from there. That's the way it works. People keep wanting to, change it and go, no, I want to get it to clean to the left. I want it to get to clean from the second space. You can't. This is the way the function was designed. This is what we have to accept. This is how we have to use it. So I'm going to save this quickly and put this in my view. Okay. Let me just put the clean function in here, this result. And there you've got the result. And of course, it's going to clean these as well because ACL automatically copies that formula and applies it to all of these, right? So you're going to get the first name. Now, notice how big this new field is. You'll often find with clean, specifically, split a little bit, but definitely with clean, you'll find that the new column tends to be much too big. For your own sake, change the size of the column afterwards. You can drag it to the left or the right, depending on how big you want it to be. You can right-click on the heading if you prefer and go to Properties and change the width to make it bigger or smaller. Or you can just right-click somewhere in the middle of your table and decide the data itself and choose Resize All Columns. So there are different methods of making the column a more sensible size. You decide which method you want to use. Now I want to do the same exercise, but I want to get the first names using split. So I need to split where the space is. Now when you say to ACL split where the space is, remember that the split function sees every space. Clean looks for the first space. Split will look for every space and it will cut through every single space. So when we say to ACL cut through the space, it cuts through the first space and it will cut through the second space. So this is my cake. I'm cutting through there and through there. I will have 3 pieces once I've cut this cake. And obviously I can't have all 3. I must only take one piece. I will take the first piece, the first segment. So let me go back to my table layout. This is my first name. I'm using the split function. Right. And let me just go double click on split. Right. Instead of string, the character field, right, I'm going to put name. Name is the column where I can see that cake that I want to cut. I want to cut the cake where the space is. Again, accept the way this function works. Too many people also get confused because they don't want to accept how a function works. No, but I wanted to cut in a second space, and it does not work like that. Get over it. If you don't get over it, you're never going to learn how this function works. You're never going to learn the language. You're never going to be able to use it. This function will cut through every single space. And then we need to take the first piece. Picture this cake in your head and see yourself physically cutting it. If you don't have that perspective, you're going to struggle. All right, we can remove that other story that we don't need for this session. And I'll put this in my view quickly. And we should get the same result as what we got with the clean function. Right, so let's just add this column to the view quickly. And there is name split. Right, same result. Okay, exact same result. Oopsie, I'm dragging things that I don't mean to drag. I'll just put that back there somewhere. Okay. All right, so it's the same result as earlier. Now, if I wanted to get the surname, I wanted to get Christine's surname. Again, this is a cake that I see. I can definitely use split to cut this where the space is, which means ACL will cut through every space. That will give me 3 pieces. And then I take the third piece. Now again, some people complicate their lives. They start saying, but I've cut this cake already. Stop thinking like that. This is your cake. You can see it's one solid cake. It says Christine Haas on it. Forget what you did or didn't do in the past. This is now a new cake. This is a brand new cake. You're starting from scratch. Don't overthink it. So this is a cake. I need to cut through there, and I'm going to take the third piece. I'm going to use split for that. So I'm going to try and get the surname using split. So I'm going to split the name field. That's where the cake is, in that column. Where the space is, which means ACL will cut through every space, and I need to take the third piece. Now, some of you might be saying, but what about this other name and this, I saw this and that. If you're seeing all sorts of funny things, my question is why? You're focusing on cutting one cake at the moment. If you're starting to learn ACL, and if you've never used any function like this before in any program, don't look at the other names. You're going to confuse yourself. If you have more experience, then yes, then you can start looking at the other names earlier than I would look at the other names. So I'm going to now save this. I want to see what the result looks like to verify that my logic is correct. The view is often there to help us verify our logic, that we did a test correctly, that in this case we split correctly, and so forth. Okay. So let me just quickly add it here. Surname split. All right, so I was trying to get Christine's surname, and I did succeed. I also succeeded by accident in getting Michael's surname, even though I wasn't focusing on that cake. Because Michael, you can see if you cut where the space is, you get the third piece. Now I notice there's a problem here. There's a blank here. There's a blank here. There's a blank here. I have to notice these things when I'm testing, looking at my results, because I need to make sure I actually got the right formula that will work not just for Christine, that will hopefully work for everyone. It actually works for most people, the formula I came up with, but not for some of these people. Now, the reason it doesn't work for Bruce Adamson is because if you cut to this where the space is, there are only 2 pieces of cake now. You can't take the third piece. There are only 2 pieces. So ACL says that's the third piece. It doesn't exist. So what we need to do is fix this somehow. Now, I'm going to create a computed field to help me out here. So before I can come back and fix the surname column, I need one of those other functions I mentioned on the slide that sometimes helps me out. I'm going to use the occurs function. Now the occurs function is there to help me count the spaces or the hyphens or whatever it is that I want in a field. So I'm going to create a field called number of spaces. I want to count how many spaces there are in someone's name, because my logic tells me Christina Haas has 2 spaces in her name. So I don't have to worry about her because the formula I have actually gives me her surname. It's where I've got someone like Bruce Adamson who has 1 space in his name that there's a problem. So if I can get ACL to see there's 1 space in his name, I can say, hey, ACL, that person with 1 space in their name, we need to try and fix their surname somehow. So I'm going to use the occurs function to count how many times a space occurs in the name column. And I'm going to search for a space. There must be a space there. Some people make a mistake. They press the space bar twice. That's wrong. That means you're looking for where there are 2 spaces next to each other. Bruce and Adamson have only 1 space between them. You must look carefully at what's going on in your data. So I want to count where there's only 1 space, okay, where there's instances of 1 space in the name. And of course, I'm expecting to see, when I add this to the view for someone like Christina Haas, 2 spaces. So, which isn't such a big deal, but for Sean O'Connell and Bruce Adamson, I'm expecting to see 1 space. That's very important to me. So adding this to the view just to verify that my logic is correct. But when I add this, I get a shock, right? This here, according to ACL, doesn't have 2 spaces, it has 16. And similarly, Bruce Adamson doesn't have 1 space, according to ACL, it has 18. The reason is this: it is counting all the spaces. There's the first space in Christine, there's a second space. After this is a third space, and a fourth, and a fifth, and so on. It keeps counting. So it will count all the spaces it sees. We as human beings often forget about the spaces after a name. They're there, they're physically there. So what we need to do is tell ACL, hang on, I don't want ACL to count all the spaces that are to the left of the name. There aren't any in this case. And I certainly don't want you to count any to the right of the name. So I'm going to first remove the spaces that might be on the left and might be on the right of the name. That will leave the spaces in the middle only. The ones that are left, I want to count. So I'm going to go back to my table layout. I'm going to fix this field of mine where I counted the spaces. I'm going to go inside the brackets of occurs. It's just like maths ACL. You want something to happen first, you must put it inside the brackets. What's in the brackets happens first. I need to remove the spaces first before I count anything. So I'm going to say all trim, open bracket, and the field from which I want to remove spaces is name. Now, if it's going to confuse you, highlight this after you've typed it, just the way I've highlighted it. So you can think to yourself, what have I just done here? I've said there's a name column. It's got spaces maybe on the left. It's got spaces on the right, but I'm using alt trim to remove it. So what do I get? Well, in my head, in the background, I get the same column where it says Christina Haas, but there are just no spaces on the left and on the right. Obviously, the spaces in the middle are still there because alt trim only removes the ones in the front and at the back. So the ones in the left middle are left. So this is the new column effectively that I see in my head and that ACL sees in the background, in which I'm going to use the occurs function to count the spaces. This gives me a result. Okay, it almost gives me a new field, if you want to think of it that way. So if I save this, I just want to verify my logic is correct, that I've got the right answers now. There we go. There's 2 spaces in Christine, 1 space in Sean O'Connell, 1 space in Bruce Adamson. So now that I have this, I can use this information as a way to explain to ACL which of these names need me to give it some different formula. This one is fine. It's not where there's 2 spaces that's the problem. There's where there is 1 space that's the problem. So I'm going to go back to my surname field. And I'm going to say, okay, to get Bruce Adamson's surname, I actually need to split the name field. I need to take the second piece because he only has 2 pieces. But I'm not going to mess with that formula. That works for Christine and a lot of the people. This is what I do a lot of the time. But what about the rest of the time? I need a condition to do something very different. My condition is going to be, let me look at the spaces column and see where the number of spaces equals 1. Remember, conditions are filter. So I've told ACL basically, go look for all the records where these people have 1 space. So look for the Bruce Adamsons and the Sean O'Connells of the world and the David Browns of the world. And when you see them, this is the formula I want you to use. Split where the space is, but take the second piece, because that's where the surname is. So I then save this, and I go and I check this in the view. Now, always remember, whenever you do something in ACL, what the logical reason was for doing something. Too many people take one example and they try and copy it blindly, letter for letter, number for number, into another field, into another data set. It doesn't work. You've got to understand the concept, the logic, the principle. All right, so it turns out I now have Bruce Adamson's surname because that was segment 2. He has only 1 space in his name, so when I split, I should rather take segment 2, not segment 3. Now, there's a slight variation here. Sometimes we can't do something without a condition, but in this particular exercise, there is a solution without a condition. So I'll just remove this condition, and I can say, all right, I've got a problem here. The segment I want is not necessarily segment number 2. Or not necessarily segment 3. What I could do is I could say, all right, let me think. Christina Haas had 2 spaces in her name. So 2 spaces plus 1, that's why I took segment 3. But David Brown has 1 space in his name, 1 space plus 1, I took segment 2. So basically the number of spaces I have in their name, if I add 1 to that, I will get the correct segment. So instead of whatever the number of spaces is, let me just double click, instead of typing a number there, let me double click on the field number of spaces. So whatever number of spaces I've calculated, I'm going to add 1 to that to give ACL the segments, tell it which segment to take. And I will get the exact same result. Now, obviously, it becomes more complicated when you have surnames like Dos Santos and Van der Meyer and so on. But you can do that. You can figure that out on your own. It's quite an interesting exercise. You will definitely need conditions, right? But that is something that you can do in ACL as well. All right, so that's the surname using split, with a condition and without a condition. I decide I want to get the surname using the clean function. Let me tell you, there is no way I can do this. What am I going to do? Say, oh, okay, there's an I there, clean from the I. Let me try that. I think there's an I, clean from the I. Now, I'm not listening to what I said to you. I said to you, it's going to delete that I and everything to the right. So why am I not listening to my own advice, right? I'm wasting my time here because clean is too violent. You cannot get anything with clean except segment 1. But I'm going to try anyway. I'm going to clean the name field from the letter I for Christine. And let me see if I get Christine's surname. Let's just see here, surname. No, it's deleted the I, the first I of Christine and everything to the right. This is not going to work. So please don't waste your time with clean if you want something other than segment 1, right? It's not going to work. Let me remove this rubbish from my view. It's a complete disaster. Okay, so I would have to use split here because clean is just too violent. Right, so let me go a bit further here to the right. Now to the right-hand side, I have a field social security number. Now I want to get the first 3 digits out here, which definitely I can do using split or clean. Split where the slash is and take the first piece, or clean where the slash is. And to save us time, I'm going to tell you when I look at my result and I come down here, I'm not going to get the first 3 digits because there's no slash that I can use for clean or split here. So if you're new to learning ACL, you know what? Just look at the first cake, it's fine, split it, clean it, and see what happens. But if you're a bit more comfortable already because of previous experience with ACL or another program, have a look at a few of the records to save you a bit of time, and then you'll see there's a problem here. There's no slash there. So for split or clean to work, I need to have a separator. And I've realized now that I don't always have a separator. So this is where substring is a useful function to use to cut this cake, so to speak. You tell it where to start and where to end and what the length is. Every single symbol has a position. So this 5 is in position 1, the 9 is in position 2, this 8 is in position 3, that first slash is in position 4, that's position 5, that 6 is in position 7, that second slash is in position 8, and so on. Here, this is a new line. This 8 is in position 1, this is in position 2, position 3, position 4, and so on. Every time you go to new line, position 1, position 2, position 3, etc. So every single piece I want, 598, 849, 661, all of them, the first digit is in position 1. They all start in position 1. Every piece I want has 3 digits in it, has length 3. 598 is 3 digits. 849, 3, 661, 3. Just count 1, 2, 3. Don't say, oh, they're the same digit. That's not how it works. 1, 2, 3. 285, 1, 2, 3. Provided I'm able to tell the substring function the start position of what I want and the length of what I want, I can use it. If you cannot tell the substring function what the start position is of something and you cannot tell it the length, forget it. You must be able to tell it both things. So the substring function is convenient often if we don't have a separator. So I'm going to call this field SSN code. I'm going to use the substring function. Right? I want to substring, take a piece out of this field called SSN. The start position is 1. The length is 3. I've established this. So I'm going to click on OK, and I'm going to save my changes. I want to see what this looks like. I want to make sure my logic is correct. So let me just wait for this now. Come now, wake up. There we go. So there we have the social security number, right? 598, 849, 661, etc. The first 3 digits in each case. I didn't use a separator. Now, I decide I want to get everyone's first name. There is a problem here. The problem is that if I want to use substring, I don't know what to put as the length, right? So I know I can do this exercise to get the first name with split and with clean. I've already done that. I was wondering now if I could do it with substring. The start position is easy. The C of Christine is in position 1. The M of Michael is in position 1. The S of Sally is in position 1. The problem is, what is the length of the name? Well, Christine has a certain length. Michael has a certain length. The lengths vary. Some people stubbornly go ahead and they type. They count how many letters in Christine and they type that. That's not going to work. But I'm going to be stubborn, like these people that won't listen, right? I'm going to refuse to listen to myself. Let me count how many letters in Christine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right. I think I know how to do this. I don't have to listen to anyone about how this function works. Let's see. So I'm going to call a C first name substring. I'm going to substring this function, this field, right? Okay, start position, the name field is what I want to substring. Start position is easy 1. Now I've forgotten the length of Christine. Let me just quickly check. CHRISTINE 9, I think I said. So the name is length 9. I'm not listening to the advice of people who warned me not to use substring if you don't know what to put as the length. So it will work for the first one, but it's going to be a disaster for most of them. And you can't have a separate condition for each name. It's not practical. Imagine if you have a million different names. So let me get, where's his first name, substring. Christine's first name I got, yay, but Michael pulled through the middle in this show. You know, look here, I've got all sorts of things here. Vincenzo I've got because he's also got 9. Sean O'Connell pulled through part of the surname. This is a mess. I cannot go and have 100 conditions to try and fix this disaster. It's just too painful. No, this is not going to work. So if I'm determined to use substring, there is something I can do first. What I could do is I could say, okay, hang on. I noticed something about the name Christine. After the name Christine is a space. After the name Michael is a space. After every name here, there is a space. If I know where that space is, then I can figure this out. So I'm going to try something first. I'm going to get the position of the space. Okay, I'll just call it space position, abbreviate. The at function will tell me where something is at, what its position is. Now, there might be 2 spaces or 10 spaces in a name. In fact, we know there's about 16 spaces in Christine's name, the way ACL counts them. But I only want to know where the first space is, the one after Christine. So I want to know where the first occurrence is of a space in the text field, in the character field called a name. And I'm going to save that. I'll put this in the view because I want to see what this looks like. Right, let's just wait for this computer. Okay, so let me just quickly add it here. Space position. This first space is in position 10, which makes sense because Christine has 9 letters in it. Now, I want to go fix this field using this number. So I think, okay, I can substring start in position 1. That's the easy bit. And I could just say to ACL, the length that you need is 10 or 8 or 6 or whatever. Now be careful, that's not actually correct because the length of Christine we know isn't 10, it's actually 9. So I need to say, when I use substring here, the length of the name is actually a calculation. Take the number, the position of that space, 10 in the example of Christine, subtract 1. That will give you the length of the name. So if I save that, I should hopefully get everyone's first name correct. So Christine's first name is still fine because that is effectively length 9, 10 minus 1. Michael's name is 8 minus 1 and so forth. So I have managed to get all their first names now by first checking where that first space was and then putting it into a calculation to calculate the length. With clean, yes, we've got the first name, but clean introduces basically lots of spaces after the name. We try not to introduce too many spaces. Spaces, as you know, can cause problems. So wherever problem possible, we avoid them. Substring will often avoid a lot of spaces because it's very precise. Start here, stop there, that's it. Clean tends to put a whole lot of spaces in. Anyway, In practice, I would probably just use split or clean to get the first name, but I definitely could use the substring function together with the add function for the first name here. Sometimes that add trick and substring are very useful though with other data. Okay, let's look at the transactions table again. I want to get the branch code. I decide I want to split where the hyphen is, or I want to clean where from the hyphen. That's fine. That makes perfectly good sense. But let's pretend I have a problem today with my keyboard. The problem is my hyphen key on my keyboard is broken. I can't type it. So there's a way around this. I'm going to go to my table layout. And I'm going to take my mouse and I'm going to highlight just one of the hyphens. And I'll call this field hyphen, because that's what it's going to have in it. Hyphen, some other things too, but definitely will have some hyphens in. I'll save this and put this in the view to show you what it looks like. It doesn't look like anything exciting. Okay, let's just see here. So this is hyphen. Right, so there's a hyphen in record one. Obviously, it won't always have a hyphen. It depends on what the data looks like. But I'm happy that I can see a hyphen somewhere in here. I can now go back to my table layout, and I can create a computed field. I'll call this field hyphen code. Every single symbol on your keyboard has a code, an ASCII code in the background. ASCII is just a bunch of codes. So when you look at your keyboard, you see capital A, for example. ASCII, you know, the computer doesn't see capital A, it might see a number 42 or whatever the code is for the letter A. I don't know what the code is, right? I didn't commit these codes to memory. But anyway, so I want to know what the code is, the ASCII code, the number that ACL sees when we see a hyphen. So I'm going to use a function called ASCII. If I give it a character, a symbol, it will tell me the code for it. So I'm going to, instead of character, double click on hyphen. I want to know the code for a hyphen. I'm going to put this in a view so I can see what that code is. Gosh, just waiting for this. Okay, right. So if I put this code, this column in the view, hyphen code, I notice that the code for a hyphen is code 45. Fine. Now remember, my ultimate objective is to split this or to clean this from the hyphen. But my hyphen key, we are pretending for the moment, is broken. So I can't type it on my keyboard. So I'm going to go back to my table layout. I'm going to say, all right, I want to create a field. I want to get the branch. And I'm going to say CHR, because I'm going to use, in addition to the clean function, a function called CHR. So as I said, I could use split for this exercise, but I'm decided to use clean. So I'm going to clean the transaction number. I want to delete from the hyphen. The problem is we're pretending I can't type the hyphen because the key is broken on my keyboard. There is a function called CHR. That CHR stands for character. If you give it a number, it will type the character for you. So even though I can't type it on my keyboard, the hyphen key, ACL can type it for me. So I'll say the character, the code was a 45, if I remember correctly. So I'm going to save this. So I'm saying ACL, type a hyphen for me, because my keyboard won't. And then clean that field from that symbol you've typed. So when I put this in my view, hopefully I will see the same branch codes as I saw earlier. Okay, right. So let's just see here. I want to add the branch where we involve the CHR function. There we go, same result as before. Now, in practice, if your hyphen key is broken, you get IT to help you, right? But in the real world, what happens is you have symbols that come in the source that the client gave you that you cannot type on your keyboard because they physically don't exist on your keyboard. Weird squiggles and weird squares that are literally nowhere on your keyboard. So what you have to do is get the code for that and get ACL then to type the symbol on your behalf. That's when we would use the ASCII and CHR trick. Don't go and say, I'm going to do this and go use right-click copy and right-click paste. Because sometimes when you paste a symbol, it might look the same to you, but to the computer, it looks different. So if I copied and pasted this hyphen, for example, it might work, or it might be, 0.001 millimeters longer or shorter or thicker or thinner than the one that I see here in the source data. So rather let ACL get the code and type the symbol for you. Don't copy and paste. It might copy and paste a variant of the symbol, which is not what you want. Okay, so that's a trick there, just so that you know about that. Now, if I go to the web block table, I have this lovely column here. I know some of you remember this and you love this table. Okay. So this weblog table, I decide I need to get the dates out. I want 24th of April, 2017, that portion. Now, some people start panicking. Calm down. It's a cake. It's a cake, for goodness sake. So what you need to say to yourself is, what symbol do I see to the left of the cake? And then some people see, oh, there's a hyphen there. No, there isn't a hyphen to the left of the cake. There is a square bracket, an open square bracket to the left of that date that you want. There's an open square bracket. Look for the symbol immediately to the left, not down there somewhere. What is immediately? What is to the right of the date? Don't tell me the time. It's not the time. It's the colon. Look for that one symbol, just the one symbol that is immediately to the right of that. Okay, when you start learning ACL, look for one symbol. Immediately to the left, immediately to the right. So some people, find this out on themselves. Okay, there's a square bracket there and there's a colon there. And then they start going, okay, now what do I do? Now I'm panicked because how do I cut in two places at once? Well, when you buy a cake, in the real physical world, do you take your knife and try and cut the cake in two different places at the same time? Are you a ninja or something? You don't do it. You cut the cake in one place, you do it, take your time, you do it calmly, and then once you finish cutting in one place, you cut in another place. It's simple. So we are going to cut in only one place. Do not try to split where the square bracket and that is as follows. This is a mistake. This is the worst thing you can do. So I'm going to make a mistake here. I'm going to say I want to get the date. And I'm going to do what some people try. I mean, it's good that they try, but I'm telling you now it's going to be wrong. I need to split this line field. I need to cut the cake that I saw in that column. And my thinking is, oh, I noticed that that date was between that symbol and that symbol. And now which piece do I want? And now they get all creative with pieces. But anyway, let me just choose a random piece. I don't know which piece to choose, to be honest, because I've made a mess here. What I have said to ACL isn't, take this piece out that's between those symbols. That's not how split works. Split is looking for symbols in your data. Those are symbols next to each other, saying, okay, this date is next to those two symbols. There's a square bracket followed immediately by a colon, followed by the date. That's what I've accidentally told ACL. And it's just going to look for those two symbols next to each other. And when it can't find it, I shouldn't be surprised that the result is not what I want. So I'm going to add this into the view thinking that I've done the right thing. This is not how split works. I've accidentally told split, look for where there's an open square bracket followed immediately by a colon. There's no such thing in this data. The colon is down there. Anyway, let me see what this looks like. And it's blank. And then people start panicking. Don't panic, okay? Don't put those two symbols next to each other because they are not next to each other in your data. So I'm going to split where that is, cut where the square bracket is. And now, before I go back, let me just make sure I know what I'm doing. If I cut this one cake where the square bracket is, there's only one open square bracket. If I cut there, I've got two pieces of cake. If you can't see this cake in your head, then write it down on a piece of paper and draw a line through there. Draw a rectangle around the data and draw a line through there. And then write numbers underneath each piece, 1, 2, 3, whatever it is. In this case, we'll only have 2, and then take that piece. So if you can't see it in your head, the cake, then draw it literally on a piece of paper so you can see it. Okay, so I need to go and say I need to split where the open square bracket is and take the second piece. Okay, if you overthink it and you're looking at the whole table, you're going to get lost. You're looking at one cake, write it down on a piece of paper if that's what it takes, right? So you can physically see it in front of you and draw the line through the bracket as if you're cutting. Now, this is the result I get. And again, some people start panicking. This is not what I want. There's all this other rubbish. Calm down if you're panicking. It's a cake. You don't panic in the kitchen. It's like, I cut the cake once. I still don't have a piece of cake. And so, cut somewhere else in the cake. It's not a stressful exercise. You're making it stressful if you do that. And you make it stressful for no reason. So forget this column now. I have got a cake here. I'm not interested in the old cake. This is now a new cake. I'm going to cut this cake. I want to get the date. Remember, that's my objective. I want the date. What do I see immediately to the left of the date? Oh, there's nothing. So never mind that. What's immediately to the right? A colon. So cut there. So let me create another computed field. I'm going to call it C_date1. And I'm going to use split or clean depending on what I want. I could actually use substring there as well. but I'll just use clean for this exercise. And I could clean this date column. Now remember where the cake is. Too many people double click this. The cake's not in that column. You're looking at a different cake. Make sure you know where the cake is. Right, so I'm cutting the cake that's in that column and I want to clean it from where the colon is. As I said, I could have used substring, which would be better because substring won't introduce spaces by accident, or it's less likely to. Clean is going to introduce lots of spaces. So I'm going to put that in the view, and now this happens. Now the good news is I've got the dates. The bad news is some people go back to panic mode. My other data's gone. I swear ACL's formatted my hard drive or something. No, the data's there. This column, remember, is just very big. Resize it. There's your data. Was just pushed off the screen because that first column was so big. Okay. Now, as I said, I could have used substring here because you can see all my dates in this new column start in position 1, and the length is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I could have used split as well, where the colons take segment 1. Look, focus on one cake, cut it in one place, and then, if you're using clean or split, and then take the new column and cut that new cake if you need to. Keep cutting until you get the result. But for goodness sake, when you cut the first time, the first column, the first cake that you had, don't cut down here somewhere if you want the date or down that side of the world. Look for what is immediately to the left and immediately to the right. You either cut through the colon first or you cut through the square bracket first. That's your decision. But cut just directly in front or just directly after what you want. It's like a surgeon who wants to remove your appendix. They start cutting your throat and they gradually cut all the way down your body until they get to where your appendix is located. It's not a very pleasant experience. It's definitely not the way the surgeon should do it. So please don't start down there if you want to get to the date. Start here right next to the date, or start here right next to the date. Okay, it will make your life easier. And of course, if it's going to confuse you, remove the column from the view afterwards that you don't need anymore. Okay, now, I want to get the time out, the 030245. Now again, some people, they think they can use split. The problem, and they say, okay, there's a colon to the left of the time. And there is indeed. But if you split where the colon is, remember, ACL doesn't split through just one colon. The split function splits through every single colon. It will cut this time into pieces. So I'm going to make a mistake. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to split where the colon is, and I see this time is in the second piece. In fact, it's not the whole time that's in the second piece, it's just the 03. So I'm going to make a mistake. I'm not going to listen to what I've learned about the split function, cutting through every colon. So I'm going to call this the time. I'm going to split where I see, all right, this line function. Let's suppose I don't have the other fields, right? That line field, I want to split where the colon is, and I want to take segment 2. That's what my logic tells me because I forgot that the split function cuts through every single colon. Be careful. All right. Do you see there? I've got 03. I've only got that part because ACL cut through that colon and that colon. Split is not going to work. Clean will certainly not work. It will wipe out that colon and everything to the right. If you already happen to have a field like this one, C date, this one here, if we already happen to have that one, it might be a bit easier, but then, I've got to clean from the space, then I've got to do something else. Although actually this is very easy because I can substring, if I think about it, starting in position 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. If I start in position 13 and I take a length of 8, substring would actually work in this field. So if you already have this field, it's quite easy. Substring this field starting in position 13, take a length of 8. But if you don't have that field and you don't for some reason need to or want to create it, we can use the add function to help us. The add function I can use to tell me where that colon is. Now remember, there's more than one colon. I need to know where the first colon is. So I'm going to say, right, let me first work out where the time starts, right? I want to know where the time starts. So my add function is going to give me an answer. I want to know where the first colon is in this original column. This is assuming I haven't created those other fields, right? So I want to see what this looks like. It will just be a bunch of numbers as usual. So let me put it in here. So this is where, according to me, the time starts. So I think the first time starts in position 31. Okay, Let me just drag this. So my logic says to me, okay, because I know the start position and the length is easy. It's always 8, right? 6 digits plus 2 colons in between to separate the hours and the minutes and the minutes and the seconds. Because I know the length and I've got a way now of telling ACL what the start is, I can use substring. Well, I'm kind of right. I don't quite have the information I want. Let's just try. Sorry, let me edit this here. I want to edit the time field. So instead of saying split, I'm going to use substring. Now, you know, for substring, I have to say the start, what the start is. And the start position, I think I have calculated. I just need to say, ACL, look at that column. I've given you all the start positions. For each record, go see what the correct position is and fill it in. And then the length is 8. Now, when I save this, let's see if I get the right result. I don't. You see, I've got a colon in front of the time and the last digit of my seconds is wrong. And then some people say, oh, okay, the problem is the length. No, the problem is not the length. If you count the time, there's 8 symbols. The length would not, the incorrect length wouldn't pull that through. I've started in the wrong place. That is not actually where the time starts. That position 31 is where the colon is. The time starts in position 32. So 31 plus 1. So I need to go back here. My time start field, this answer that I've got here, whatever it is, just remember it's an answer. How you look at things will help you or understand things or confuse you. Right? That answer, it's an answer. Don't touch it. Just add 1 afterwards. 31. This gave, imagine that if you look at that, you see 31. Now you just write +1 afterwards. So now the new start position is 32 for that first one. And look, it now works. Always remember, when you use at, you're not, as a general rule, getting the correct last position, start position, or end position for something. You often have to add or subtract 1. Just be very careful there. So there I can get the times using that method. It's probably the easiest method if I don't create the other field with the dates first. In fact, as a general rule, I would go for this method. If I see a whole lot of data stuck together like that and someone says to me, give me the time, I say, look, I can see the times of the same length. I can see there's a symbol in front that tells me where they start. Great, I can go for it. Okay, so that's that function there. Now, let me go to this lovely, let me just see, this lovely table here, perch orders. Now again, people see this, whether it's in the training room or in the office, something like this, and they start panicking. Don't panic. Right, so here, what I would do normally is first, even though I can see the data is hopelessly skewed, first thing I would do is look at the table layout. Because the view sometimes makes things look worse than they are. If you look at the table layout, everything is actually very nice and neat. And all I need to do here actually is highlight where that supply name is up to in front of the supply number, give the field a name and save it. It's very easy. So never mind that it's not lined up in the view. In the table layout, it's lined up beautifully. But there will be times when your data in the table layout is not lined up either. This typically happens with PDFs. With PDFs, most of them, we tend to import them in a huge mess like this, and they look like this in the view and in the table layout. So you cannot go ahead and say, I'm going to highlight things. You cannot, if that's the case, the scenario that I described to you, you cannot go ahead and use substring because the lengths and the start positions will be all over the show, especially the start positions. The things will be skewed even in the table layout. So if we pretend that this is a PDF that we imported and everything is going to skew in the table layout as well, we will have to create computed fields. So I'm going to first try to get the supplier name. So I'm going to make a mistake. So I'll call this supplier. And then I'm going to say, all right, my logic tells me I can split where the space is and take the first segment. And this is because I'm not looking properly at the data and possibly because I'm panicking a bit as well. So let me see what this looks like. Do I get the supplier name? So I'm going to add this column to the view. And I see only agency. I don't see the rest of the name. Because when I was thinking about splitting where the space is, I thought about the space there. But I need to be sensitive to all the spaces. There's a space here between agency and nickel as well. So I actually took the first piece, agency. ACL cuts through every space, not just through the ones I wanted to. Okay, I can't read my mind. So that's not going to work. What I could do is, if I wanted to do this method, is I could say split where there are 2 spaces next to each other. So I put 2 spaces there now. That will work because there are at least 2 spaces there. Okay, there is only 1 space between agency and nickel, not 2 spaces. So that trick would work there. Obviously, I would need to somehow fill in those blank spaces with agency nickel ink and get rid of all this nonsense. But for the moment, my objective is to try and get the columns as best as I can, and then I can click split disasters afterwards. Right? Now, I'm thinking about getting the supplier number, that 103957. Now, if I try and use that trick, take 2 spaces and maybe take segment 2, it won't work. Because after those 2 spaces, there's another space. Segment 2 will actually be a space itself. So I have to, if I start playing it, I don't want to start playing a guessing game of, okay, which segment is the correct one after those 2 spaces there? Because even if I get the right segment, it won't be the same for the other supply names. This is a disaster. It's too much drama, this. You can't use this trick all the time. So I'm going to try another trick. I'm going to say, why don't I use this supplier name as the separator? If I cut through this, and then I can take the second segment. Now, some people are probably overthinking. Don't overthink. I'm cutting in one place. This is my separator. Now, you might say there's nothing to the left of that, and you'd be right. But when you use split, according to ACL, there's always something to the left. So there's something to the left, even if we don't see it. So therefore, this 103957 is in segment number 2. So I want to use agency nickel ink as my separator to get the supplier number. So let me try this, supplier number. And I'm going to say, let me split this line column. That's where the cake is that I need to cut up. My separator is the supplier name, and I want to take the second piece. Now, I'm not going to panic. I'm going to see what happens in my view. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, I'll figure out what happened. What went wrong, right? So let's see what my supply number column looks like. I just want to resize all this, and I think I'll drag this. And I notice my supply number column is blank. Now, the reason is this. I said to ACL, take this cake, cut it where you see agency nickel ink. Well, I thought that's what I said, but actually that's not what I said. I said cut where you see agency nickel ink and a certain number of spaces. Now, let's suppose, for argument's sake, that there are 10 spaces after this name in the supply column. There might not be 10 spaces after this. There might be only 8 spaces. Therefore, it can't find such a separator. Spaces get in the way. We need to be very sensitive to spaces. So I'm going to say, okay, don't use the supplier name that I got as the separator because there might be too many spaces. Let me altrim that. Take the altrim version of the supply name. ACL agency nickel ink without the spaces on the left and the right. Use that as a separator. And let's see if that works. And it does work, except, of course, if I look here now, oopsie, I can see all this other drama, but this is fine. I'm getting there. Now I need to remove this. And I say to myself, oh, okay, why don't I just clean from the space? Because there's a space here. But again, I'm not being sensitive enough to spaces if I say that. There are spaces to the left of this number. If I clean from the space, it's going to delete that space and everything to the right. It will wipe out everything. So before I clean this, I need to altrim it. Now, I could do this in separate fields, but because of time constraints, I'm going to quickly do it in one field. I'm going to say that result I got after splitting. I need to first altrim it to make sure there are no spaces on the left, and then I can clean it, starting from whatever spaces are left. And then I want to save this just to make sure I've got the right result. And there I now have the supplier number. Now, I like to call this trick the domino trick or the domino effect, because once you've got one thing, one piece of data, you can use that as a separator to get the next one. Then I can use this to get the purchase order number and so forth. Obviously, it's going to be trickier to get these, but you can also use the domino effect, to get those. But let's say I haven't gotten any of these yet. There is another way I'm going to quickly show you that's going to make life even easier than the domino effect in the long run. The one problem I have here in this line column is there's no standard separator. Sometimes it's 2 spaces, sometimes it might be 10 spaces, sometimes it's segment 3, sometimes it's segment 4. I don't know. It's just, it's a mess. I'm not sure what to use as a separator if I, don't know the domino effect. So what I can do is I can introduce a separator. I'll create a new field. Let me call it line 2. I'm going to use a function called regex replace, which is like a replace function, but it uses regular expressions. I used it in one of my other sessions. I hardly ever use regular expressions, but I definitely use it for PDFs. I'm going to take this messy column and I'm going to say, look for where. Now, remember, regular expressions have a completely different language from ACL, different syntax. They're not an ACL thing. So I have to learn this foreign language called regular expressions. I'm going to put backslash small s, backslash small s. The backslash small s in regular expressions means space or tab. So I've typed 2 spaces next to each other, or I've typed 2 tabs next to each other, or I've typed 1 space followed by tab, or 1 tab followed by space, depending on how you interpret that, depending on what's in the data. Then I'm going to put a plus sign. So I'm saying to ACL, if you see 2 or more spaces next to each other, or 2 or more tabs next to each other, or 1 space and 10 tabs, or 1 space, 1 tab, 1 space, 1 tab, whatever, next to each other, that's what I want you to replace. And I'm going to replace it with a caret symbol, which is you get by typing Shift-6 on your computer. Now let's see what this looks like. I want to see what this looks like. The strange thing that I've done, what's the impact? Okay, just here, right. So let me add this column to the view. This is line 2. And you'll see in the original column after agency nickel ink, I had a whole lot of spaces. How many? I'm not sure, but I can tell you there were 2 or more. After agency nickel ink, do I still have 2 or more spaces? No, because I replaced 2 or more spaces with that symbol. Inside agency nickel ink, there are still spaces because I didn't say replace 1 space. I said you've got to have 2 or more spaces next to one another. Otherwise, you cannot replace them. Between this vendor number and the purchase order number, how many spaces are there? I'm not sure, but I can see there's 2 or more. Replace them with 1 caret symbol. Now, what I would do is I would use the split function consistently. And I wouldn't need to use the domino trick. My separator will always be that caret symbol. Now, you don't have to use the caret symbol when you do that regex replace trick. But the reason I chose it is because I know it's not in my data. Make sure that whatever you put there as your separator does not exist in your data. Otherwise, you're going to have a problem. So now I can split wherever that is, take segment 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you know scripting, it makes it even easier because you can copy and paste, and make slight modifications. Right, so that's a bit of a revision on split and clean and substring and some other things. And maybe for some of you, 1 or 2 of those topics are new. So guys, that's it for today. The long weekend is coming up, so you guys get to stay home for 3 days. Yay, how's that? Oh, wait, you're busy, you're in confinement, right? Oh, well, pretend that you weren't. You get to stay home for 3 days. But anyway, guys, I will see you. I think it is on the 14th, if I'm not mistaken. Just check your calendars. And that's it for today. Have a good day.